Hi everyone, so today we're going to talk about identities and factoring. So we've learned several different methods to simplifying trig expressions and then also verifying identities. So today we're going to focus more on fractions and how to use different methods in order to simplify. Okay, so our first method we're going to look at is getting a common denominator. So what I can do is I can look at my question and I can say, okay, well, I have the sine of theta plus cosine of theta times, and then I have cotangent. Well, I know that I could rewrite cotangent as cosine over sine, and doing that actually allows me to get a denominator, which I have is sine. So if I multiply my second fraction here, I have cosine times cosine, which is cosine squared of theta over sine of theta. But then in order for me to do anything with the first term that I have, which is sine, well, I'm going to get a common denominator, which means I'd have to multiply the top and the bottom by sine of theta. Well, then multiplying that first fraction there would get me sine times sine, which is sine squared, over sine of theta. So now when I have both of my fractions have the same denominator, well, I can just add my numerators. And I know that I have here sine squared plus cosine squared. Well, I know that is the same thing as 1, and that's 1 over sine of theta. And I know that 1 over sine theta is the same thing as cosecant. Okay, here in letter B, we are verifying the identity. And remember, when we're doing that, we're only changing one side of my equation to have it equal to the other. So now what I'm going to have to do is I'm going to say, okay, well, I have two different denominators. My least common denominator would be cosine times sine, which means I'm going to have to multiply both of my fractions. So I have to multiply the one on the left by sine of theta, and then I have to multiply the one on the right by cosine of theta. So that would get me sine times sine, which is again sine squared, over sine times cosine. And then I'm going to add that to cosine squared theta over sine times cosine. So what I look here is I can say, all right, well, if I add my fractions together, well, I know, again, adjusting my numerator, I've got sine squared plus cosine squared. Well, I know that's 1, and then that's going to be over sine theta cosine theta. Okay, so when I look at this fraction now, I'm saying, okay, well, I got to get this to look like cosecant and secant. So what I can do is I can say, well, I could technically split up my fraction. I know that 1 over sine and then also 1 over cosine, well, I could actually rewrite those. That 1 over sine is cosecant of theta, and 1 over cosine is the secant of theta, which is one I wanted, and that matches to what I had on the other side of my equation. So the second method we have is splitting the fraction when we have a sum or difference that is on the numerator. So if we're verifying, what I can do is I can split up my fraction. I could say I have tangent theta over tangent theta, and I also have cotangent of theta over tangent of theta. Okay, so if I look at this, I say, oh, well, I can simplify this. Tangent over tangent is the same thing as 1. And then I have here cotangent, but then I also have tangent. Well, if I split that up, I can say that cotangent times 1 over tangent. Okay, well, to get this to look like something I can get with cosecant. So I have to figure out, well, how can I change this tangent and cotangent? Well, what I could do is I can say this is the same thing as cotangent theta times cotangent of theta, which I also know is the same thing as cotangent cotangent squared of theta. Now, if I were to keep bringing my 1 and then the plus down all the way as I continue to the very end, well, I know that I actually have another identity, and 1 plus cotangent of theta is cosecant squared of theta, which would match to the right side of my identity. Okay, in letter F, we are going to go ahead and verify the left side. And so what we can do is, again, split. So 1 over secant squared of theta added to secant squared of theta over secant squared of theta. Now what I can do is go ahead and simplify. So 1 over secant squared is cosine squared. And then plus secant squared over secant squared is this 1. And now I have, 1 plus cosine squared, which is what I wanted. Thanks for learning with me today, unlocking the power of math, one problem at a time. See you in the next lesson.